The gunshot that killed Henry Sutton echoed through the high desert valley of Yuma, Arizona. And his widow Rebecca heard it from nearly half a mile away, though she would never know that the sharp crack splitting the August afternoon in 1878 was the exact moment her world changed forever. Rebecca Sutton was 24 years old when she became a widow, standing at the kitchen window of their modest ranch house with flour on her hands from making bread when the ranch foreman rode up fast enough to kick dust all the way to the porch. She knew before he even dismounted. The way he held his hat told her everything. Henry had been moving cattle through the narrow canyon pass when something spooked the herd, and he went down under 100 hooves and horns, and by the time they reached him, there was nothing left to do but wrap him in a blanket and bring him home. The funeral was 3 days later, a scorching afternoon that felt like the sun itself was trying to burn away her grief. Half of Yuma turned out, filling the small cemetery on the hill overlooking the Colorado River. They said kind words about Henry, about his cherished yeri and his good nature, but Rebecca heard none of it through the roaring in her ears. At 24, she was alone in a territory that did not suffer the weak. With a ranch she could not run by herself and debts she had only learned about after reading through Henry's papers. 2 weeks after burying her husband, Rebecca sat in the office of Gerald Morrison, the banker who held the note on the ranch. He was a portly man with mutton chops that seemed to grow wider every time she saw him, and he had the kind of sympathy that vanished the moment money entered the conversation. "Mrs. Sutton, I understand your situation is difficult," Morrison said, folding his hands on the desk. "But the payment was due before your husband passed, and it remains due now. I can give you 30 days. After that, I will have no choice but to foreclose." 30 days, Rebecca repeated, her voice hollow. "Mr. Morrison, the ranch is worth 10 times what we owe. Surely we can work out an arrangement." "The ranch would be worth that if you could work it, but you cannot work it alone, Mrs. Sutton. Be reasonable. A woman alone out there, it is impossible." Rebecca wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she was too tired, too hollow. She left the bank and walked down the dusty main street of Yuma, past the general store and the saloon and the hotel, feeling the eyes of the town on her back. The widow. The poor widow who could not even keep her husband's ranch. She had family back in Philadelphia. Her brother, Thomas, had written twice since Henry's death, urging her to come home, to leave this hard country and return to civilization. The thought of going back east, of admitting defeat, of living on her brother's charity for the rest of her life, made her stomach turn. But what choice did she have? It took another week for Rebecca to make the decision, and when she did, it was with a heavy heart and heavier steps. She would sell what she could, pay what debts she must, and use whatever remained to buy passage on the stage east. The ranch would go to the bank. Everything Henry had worked for would disappear as if it had never been. The morning she went to book her passage, the stage office was busy with the usual chaos of departure day. The agent, a nervous man named Perkins, looked up from his ledger with harried eyes. "Mrs. Sutton, yes, I can get you on the stage, but I have to be honest with you, it is not a pleasant journey for a woman alone. 3 weeks to Kansas City, through some of the roughest territory in the West. Apaches have been active along the southern route. Just last month a stage was hit near Apache Pass." "I have no choice," Rebecca said simply. "When is the next departure?" "Thursday morning. But madam, if I might suggest, you consider waiting for a military escort. There is a supply train heading east in about 6 weeks." 6 weeks? Rebecca shook her head. "No, I need to leave now. Thursday will be fine." Perkins sighed and wrote out her ticket. "Then I would suggest you hire a personal escort, Mrs. Sutton, someone who knows the territory, who can keep you safe." The stage company provides a driver and a guard, but another gun would not hurt. Rebecca had not considered this, and the suggestion brought a fresh wave of worry. Hire an escort with what money? She was already counting every dollar, trying to make the sums work out in her head. But Perkins was right. The thought of traveling alone, even with the stage, through hundreds of miles of desert and mountain, with Apaches and outlaws and a dozen other dangers, made her realize how foolish she had been. "You know anyone?" she asked quietly. Perkins scratched his chin. "There is a man, Cole Ramsey. He is a scout, does some guide work, some bounty hunting. Good man, fair man, knows the territory better than anyone I have ever met. He is expensive, though." "How expensive?" Last I heard, $200 to guide someone to Kansas City. $200. Rebecca felt her heart sink. She had maybe $300 left after selling her furniture and settling the immediate debts. $200 for an escort would leave her almost nothing when she reached her brother's home. But what good would the money do if she died in the desert? "Where can I find this Cole Ramsey?" she asked. "Usually at the Silver Dollar Saloon in the evenings. Big fellow, dark hair, wears a gray hat with a silver band. Cannot miss him." That evening, Rebecca dressed in her most respectable morning dress and walked to the Silver Dollar Saloon. She had never entered a saloon before, not even with Henry, and the thought of walking into one alone made her hands shake. But she had no choice. She pushed through the swinging doors into a fog of tobacco smoke and the smell of whiskey and unwashed men. The saloon went quiet when she entered. Every eye turned to her, and she felt her cheeks burn under the scrutiny. The piano player stopped mid-song. A card game in the corner paused, hands frozen over the table. "Help you, madam?" the bartender asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I am looking for Cole Ramsey," Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That would be me." The voice came from a table in the back corner, and Rebecca turned to see a man rising from his chair. Perkins had been right. You could not miss him. Cole Ramsey stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that strained against a worn cotton shirt. He was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that needed a cut and several days of stubble on a strong jaw. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Gray as a thunderstorm and just as intense. He walked toward her with the easy confidence of a man who knew he could handle himself and stopped a respectful distance away, holding his hat in his hands. "Mrs. Sutton," he said, and she realized he knew who she was. Of course he did. Everyone in Yuma knew the widow. "Mr. Ramsey, I would like to speak with you about a business proposition, perhaps somewhere more private." A ripple of laughter went through the saloon, and Rebecca felt her face burn hotter. Cole shot a hard look at the room, and the laughter died. "The hotel dining room," he suggested. "It is quiet this time of evening." Rebecca nodded gratefully and turned to leave. Cole followed her out into the twilight, and they walked in silence to the hotel. The dining room was indeed quiet, with only one other table occupied by an elderly couple. Cole pulled out a chair for Rebecca, waited until she was seated, then took the chair across from her. A waitress came by and Cole ordered coffee. When they were alone again, he leaned back in his chair and studied her with those gray eyes. "You need an escort east," he said. It was not a question. "Mr. Perkins told you. Word travels fast in a small town. I heard you were leaving, heard you booked passage on Thursday's stage. I figured you might come looking." Rebecca folded her hands on the table. "Then you know my situation. Mr. Perkins said you charge $200 to Kansas City." "That is right. I can pay $150. That is all I can spare." Cole was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Sutton, I do not mean to be indelicate, but I know about your husband's debts. I know the bank foreclosed on the ranch. $150 might be all you have to your name." Rebecca lifted her chin. Then you understand why I cannot pay more. I understand why you should not be making this journey at all. Stay in Yuma, find work. You are young, you are capable. You do not need to run back east. The words stung because they touched the raw nerve of her own doubts. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Ramsey, but my decisions are my own. Will you accept $150 or not? Cole sighed and rubbed his jaw. Lady, do you have any idea what you are asking? 3 weeks through country that wants you dead. Apache hunting parties all along the southern route. Outlaws working the stage roads. Heat that can kill you in a day without water. Flash floods in the canyons. Rattlesnakes. Scorpions. And that is before we even get to the really dangerous parts. Which is why I need someone who knows the territory, Rebecca said steadily. Someone like you. For $150, I could sit in that saloon and drink good whiskey for a month. But you would not. Mr. Perkins told me you were a good man. Perkins talks too much. But there was a hint of amusement in Cole's eyes now. He studied her for a long moment, and Rebecca met his gaze without flinching. Finally, he shook his head. You are a stubborn woman, Mrs. Sutton. I am a desperate woman, Mr. Ramsey. There is a difference. Cole was silent again, turning his coffee cup in his hands. The waitress brought their coffee and left. Finally, Cole looked up at her. $150, but I have conditions. We do not take the stage. Rebecca blinked. I already bought my ticket. Sell it back. The stage is a target. Big, slow, loud, and everyone knows the schedule. We go on horseback, just the two of us. We can move faster, stay off the main roads, avoid trouble instead of riding right into it. Mr. Ramsey, I have never ridden for more than an hour at a time. 3 weeks on horseback. I do not think I could manage it. You will learn. You are tougher than you think, or you would not be sitting here trying to hire me. Cole leaned forward. Mrs. Sutton, if you want to reach Kansas City alive, this is how we do it. My way, my rules, or I walk away right now. Rebecca thought about the stage, about Perkins' warnings, about Apache attacks. She thought about being cooped up in a hot, cramped coach with strangers for 3 weeks, following a route that everyone knew. Cole's way made sense, even if it terrified her. All right, she said. When do we leave? Day after tomorrow. Sunrise. That gives you time to get outfitted properly. You will need different clothes. Riding skirts, sturdy boots, a hat that actually shades your face. A good canteen. A bedroll. I will provide the horses and the supplies. What should I bring? As little as possible. 1 bag and pack light. We are not taking a wagon. Rebecca nodded, her mind already racing through what she owned, what she could carry, what she would have to leave behind. It seemed like she was leaving behind more and more with each passing day. One more thing, Cole said, his voice serious. Once we leave Yuma, you do what I say when I say it, no questions asked. If I tell you to ride, you ride. If I tell you to hide, you hide. If I tell you to be quiet, you do not make a sound. Your life will depend on it, and I will not have you getting us both killed because you want to argue. Understood. Understood. Good. Cole stood up and put on his hat. Meet me at the livery stable, sunrise, day after tomorrow. Do not be late. He walked out without another word, leaving Rebecca sitting alone with her coffee and her thoughts. She had just committed herself to riding alone across hostile territory with a man she had just met, trusting him with her life. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something she had not felt in weeks. Hope. The next day was a blur of activity. Rebecca returned her stage ticket to a disapproving Perkins and used the refund to buy the supplies Cole had specified. The woman at the general store, Mrs. Henderson, helped her pick out practical clothing with a knowing eye. So you are riding out with Cole Ramsey, Mrs. Henderson said as she wrapped up a pair of sturdy leather boots. You could do worse. He is a good man, that one. Keeps to himself mostly, but he is honest and he knows the territory better than anyone. Have you known him long? Rebecca asked, curious despite herself. 5 years, maybe 6. He came to Yuma after some trouble up north, never said what kind and nobody asks. Does odd jobs mostly. Scouting for the army, guiding hunters, tracking down wanted men. He brought in the Dawson gang last year, all 4 of them, without firing a shot. Smart man. Rebecca filed this information away as she packed her purchases. That evening, she sold the last of her furniture to a neighbor who had always admired Henry's desk. She sold her wedding china to another. Piece by piece, she dismantled the life she had built with Henry until all that remained fit in a single leather bag. She spent her last night in the ranch house on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the familiar sounds of the desert night. The coyotes singing in the distance. The wind rattling the shutters. She thought about Henry, about their 2 years of marriage, about the dreams they had shared for this place. She cried quietly in the darkness, mourning not just her husband but the future they would never have. But when the sun rose the next morning, Rebecca dried her tears, dressed in her new riding clothes, and walked away from the ranch without looking back. Some doors closed forever, and there was no point in staring at them. Cole was already at the livery when she arrived, just as the sun was painting the eastern sky pink and gold. He had 2 horses saddled and ready, a tall bay gelding for himself and a smaller sorrel mare for Rebecca. The horses were loaded with supplies, bedrolls, and saddlebags that looked well packed. Morning, Cole said, looking her over with an approving nod. Those clothes will do. You know how to ride. Henry taught me the basics. Good enough. This is Daisy. He patted the sorrel mare's neck. She is steady, patient, and she will not throw you unless you do something truly stupid. Talk to her. Horses like that. Rebecca approached Daisy cautiously and stroked her soft nose. The mare whuffed gently and bumped her head against Rebecca's shoulder. I think she likes you, Cole said. That is a good sign. Ready to go. As ready as I will ever be. Cole helped her mount, adjusting her stirrups and showing her how to hold the reins properly. Then he swung up onto his own horse with easy grace and looked at her. We will take it easy today. Get you used to the saddle. There is a spot about 15 miles northeast where we can camp tonight. If you need to stop, you tell me. If you are hurting, you tell me. If something is wrong, you tell me. Pride will get you killed out here. Rebecca nodded, too nervous to speak. Cole clicked his tongue and his bay started walking. Daisy followed without prompting, and just like that, they were leaving Yuma behind. The first few hours were not as bad as Rebecca had feared. The morning was cool, the horses moved at an easy walk, and the landscape had a harsh beauty that she had never really noticed before. The desert was alive with color in the early light, the sand glowing gold, the rocks painted in shades of red and orange, the sparse vegetation a defiant green. Cole rode slightly ahead, his eyes constantly moving, scanning the terrain with a vigilance that never seemed to relax. He did not speak much, but occasionally he would point out something, a hawk circling overhead, tracks in the sand that told him some animal had passed recently, a rock formation that served as a landmark. By midday, Rebecca was starting to feel the strain. Her thighs ached from gripping the saddle, her back was sore, and the heat was becoming oppressive despite her hat. But she did not complain. She had agreed to Cole's terms, and she would not prove him right by whining on the first day. Cole called a halt in the shade of a massive boulder and helped her down from the saddle. Rebecca's legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and she had to grab the stirrup to keep from falling. Easy, Cole said, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. That is normal, walk it off. Rebecca limped in a small circle while Cole unpacked some food, hard biscuits and dried meat that tasted like leather but filled the hollow in her stomach. He gave her water from a canteen and told her to drink slowly. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I am fine." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You are in pain." I said I am fine. Stubborn. But there was no heat in his words. "We will rest here for an hour, let the horses rest too, then another few hours and we will make camp for the night." The afternoon was harder. The brief rest had only made Rebecca more aware of her aches, and the heat was brutal despite the approaching evening. She focused on Daisy's ears, on the rhythm of the horse's walk, on anything but the burning in her muscles. When Cole finally called a halt near a dry wash with a few scraggly trees, Rebecca slid from the saddle and collapsed on the ground, too tired to care about dignity. Cole worked around her, unsaddling the horses, setting up a small camp, building a fire. She watched him move with efficient economy, every action purposeful, nothing wasted. "Here." He handed her a tin cup of coffee and a plate with more of the dried meat and a handful of beans he had heated over the fire. "Eat. You need your strength." Rebecca forced herself to eat, then helped Cole spread out the bedrolls. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and Rebecca was grateful for the fire. "First day is always the hardest," Cole said, sitting across the fire from her. "Your body will adjust. By the end of the week you will be wondering what you were complaining about." "I did not complain." "No, you did not. I respect that." Cole poked at the fire with a stick. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Sutton. I will take first watch." "Watch? You think there is danger here. There is always danger. That is why I get paid." He smiled slightly, the first real smile she had seen from him. It softened his hard features and made him look younger. "Sleep. I will wake you if anything happens." Rebecca lay down on her bedroll, certain she was too sore and anxious to sleep, but exhaustion won out, and she was unconscious within minutes. She woke once in the night to see Cole sitting by the fire, his rifle across his knees staring out into the darkness. The sight should have frightened her, but instead she felt safe. She closed her eyes and slept again. The pattern repeated itself over the next several days. Up before dawn, riding until midday, a brief rest, then riding until evening. Make camp, eat, sleep, and start again. Rebecca's body slowly adapted to the punishment, the aches becoming manageable, her seat in the saddle becoming more natural. She learned to read the land the way Cole did, to spot the signs of water, to understand the tracks that crossed their path. Cole was a patient teacher, answering her questions when she asked, offering advice when he saw her struggling. But he remained distant, professional, keeping a careful space between them. They talked about practical things, about the route they were taking, about the dangers they might face. He told her about the Apache, about their culture and their grievances against the white settlers who had taken their land. He spoke with respect, even admiration, for their skill and their determination. "They are fighting for their home," he said one evening as they sat by the fire. "I cannot fault them for that. If someone came and took your land, told you to move somewhere you had never been, you would fight too." "Have you ever fought them?" Rebecca asked. "I have fought beside them and against them. Depends on the circumstances. I try not to make enemies if I can avoid it, but sometimes you do not get a choice." On the 6th day, they reached a small settlement, barely more than a trading post and a few adobe buildings clustered around a well. Cole traded for fresh supplies and filled their canteens while Rebecca stretched her legs and tried to work out the stiffness in her back. An old Mexican man sat in the shade of the trading post, smoking a cigarette and watching them with shrewd eyes. When Cole walked past, the man spoke in rapid Spanish. Cole replied in the same language, and they had a brief conversation that Rebecca could not follow. The old man's expression grew serious, and he gestured to the north. Cole nodded his thanks and returned to Rebecca. "We need to change our route." "Why? What did he say?" "There is trouble to the north. A group of outlaws have been hitting settlements along the Gila River. They hit a ranch 3 days ago, killed the family. The army is hunting them, but they have not caught them yet." Rebecca felt a chill despite the heat. "What do? We go around. It will add a few days to our journey, but it is safer." Cole swung up onto his horse. "Come on, we need to make some distance before dark." They rode hard that afternoon, pushing the horses faster than usual. Cole's vigilance, always present, became even more intense. His hand never strayed far from the rifle on his saddle, and his eyes constantly scanned the horizon. That night, they camped without a fire. Cole said the smoke could be seen for miles, and he did not want to attract attention. They ate cold food and spoke in whispers. Rebecca wrapped herself in her blanket and tried not to think about outlaws in the darkness. She must have dozed off, because she woke to Cole's hand over her mouth. His face was close to hers, his expression grim. He put a finger to his lips, then slowly removed his hand. Rebecca nodded that she understood. Cole pointed to the north. In the distance, maybe a mile away, Rebecca could see lights, campfires, several of them. "Outlaws," she whispered. Maybe just travelers, but we are not taking chances." Cole kept his voice barely audible. "We leave now. No sounds. Stay close to me." They packed up in darkness, moving with agonizing slowness to avoid making noise. Cole led the horses by their reins, walking them carefully through the desert. Rebecca followed, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it could be heard for miles. They walked for what felt like hours, putting distance between themselves and those distant fires. Finally, when they had traveled several miles, Cole allowed them to mount and they rode through the rest of the night. Dawn found them exhausted but safe, and Cole finally allowed them to stop in a sheltered canyon where they could rest. Rebecca was shaking from fear and fatigue, and when Cole handed her some water, she could barely hold the canteen. "You did good," Cole said quietly. "You stayed calm, stayed quiet. That probably saved our lives." "Were they outlaws?" "I do not know, but I was not going to wait to find out." Cole built a small fire in the shelter of the canyon walls, where the smoke would be dispersed. "Get some sleep. We will rest here today and travel again tonight." Rebecca tried to sleep, but every sound made her eyes snap open. She had known this journey would be dangerous, but knowing it intellectually was different from feeling the reality of it. Out here, death was always close. One mistake, one wrong turn, and they could vanish into the desert forever. Cole must have sensed her fear because he moved his bedroll closer to hers. "I have got you," he said simply. "Try to rest." The simple words, the quiet confidence in his voice, eased something in Rebecca's chest. She closed her eyes, and this time sleep came. They traveled by night for the next 3 days, a surreal existence of sleeping in hidden camps during the heat of the day and riding through the cool darkness. Cole navigated by the stars with a skill that amazed Rebecca. He seemed to know exactly where he was at all times, never hesitating, never lost. During the long hours of riding, they talked more than they had before. Perhaps it was the darkness that made it easier, or perhaps it was simply that they had been on the trail long enough that the walls between them were starting to come down. "Why did you come to Yuma?" Rebecca asked one night as they rode beneath a sky full of stars. Cole was quiet for a moment. "I needed a fresh start." "From what?" "The war, some things that came after." He did not elaborate, and Rebecca did not push. Everyone had secrets, especially out here. "Were you a soldier for a while?" "Cavalry mostly, scouting." I was good at it, good at finding the enemy, good at staying alive. But I got tired of killing, tired of watching friends die, so when my enlistment was up, I left. Do you have family? Had. Parents died when I was young. Sister married a farmer in Kansas. I have not seen her in 5 years. Cole glanced at her. What about you? You are going back to family. My brother in Philadelphia. He is a lawyer. He never approved of Henry, of me moving out west. I suppose he will feel vindicated now. You do not sound happy about going back. Rebecca was surprised by how much she wanted to tell him the truth. I am not, but what choice do I have? I cannot make it alone out here. You are stronger than you think. Everyone keeps saying that, but strength does not pay debts or run a ranch. No, but it keeps you alive. That is worth something. They rode in silence for a while, and Rebecca thought about his words. She had survived Henry's death, survived the loss of everything they had built, survived this journey through dangerous country. Maybe that was a kind of strength, even if it did not feel like it. On their 10th day out of Yuma, they reached the Gila River. The sight of actual running water after days of desert made Rebecca want to weep with relief. Cole let the horses drink their fill while he refilled their canteens. We will follow the river for a few days, he said. Easier traveling, and there are settlements where we can resupply. That afternoon, they reached a small town called Safford. It was larger than the trading post they had stopped at before, with actual streets and buildings and people. Cole found a small hotel and paid for 2 rooms, the first real beds they would sleep in since leaving Yuma. Rebecca stood in her room and stared at the bed, the wash basin, the actual walls and door. Luxury. She stripped off her dusty clothes and washed with water from the basin, scrubbing away layers of dirt and sweat. She washed her hair, combed out the tangles, put on the one clean dress she had packed. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She was thinner, her face tanned from the sun despite her hat, her eyes harder somehow. She looked like she belonged out here. That evening, Cole took her to the town's only restaurant, a small place with checkered tablecloths and actual cooked food. Rebecca ordered steak and potatoes and ate until she could not take another bite. Cole watched her with amusement. Better than trail food? He asked. So much better. Rebecca sat back in her chair, feeling more human than she had in days. How much farther to Kansas City? About 2 more weeks if the weather holds and we do not run into trouble. 2 more weeks. Halfway there. Rebecca should have felt relieved, but instead she felt a strange reluctance. Once they reached Kansas City, this journey would be over. Cole would collect his payment and disappear back to his life, and she would continue east to Philadelphia, to her brother's house, to a future that felt increasingly like a prison. What will you do when we get there? She asked. Cole shrugged. Head back west. There is always work for a scout. Back to Yuma, maybe, or maybe somewhere else. I do not stay in one place too long. That sounds lonely. Cole met her eyes. It can be, but it is simpler. No ties, no commitments, no one depending on you, no one to care if you live or die. That too. Cole signaled the waitress for more coffee. But that is the choice I made. I am not complaining. Rebecca wanted to ask more, wanted to understand this man who had become her protector and her companion over these hard days. But the waitress arrived with the coffee, and the moment passed. They left Safford the next morning, following the river northeast. The landscape was changing, becoming greener with more vegetation and trees. The heat was still intense, but there was water now, reliable water, and that made all the difference. On their 13th day, they encountered their first real trouble since leaving Yuma. They were riding through a narrow canyon, following an old trail that Cole said would save them a day's travel. The walls rose high on either side, red rock carved by ancient water into fantastic shapes. Rebecca was admiring the view when Cole suddenly raised his hand. "Stop." His voice was sharp, and Rebecca pulled Daisy to a halt immediately. Cole sat motionless on his horse, his head cocked slightly, listening. Then Rebecca heard it too. Voices. Men's voices echoing off the canyon walls. "Back," Cole whispered. "Slowly. No noise." They started to turn the horses, but it was too late. A man appeared on the trail ahead, then another, then three more. 5 men, all armed, all wearing expressions that made Rebecca's blood run cold. "Well, look what we have here," the lead man said. He was big, with a scarred face and a smile that was more of a leer. "Looks like we found us some travelers." Cole's hand moved toward his rifle, but the man shook his head. "I would not do that, friend. My boys have got you covered from above." Rebecca looked up and saw more men on the canyon rim, rifles pointed down at them. They were trapped. "We do not want trouble," Cole said calmly. "Just passing through." "Oh, you will not get trouble. Just give us your horses, your supplies, your money, and you can walk right out of here." "Easy as that." "And if we refuse?" The scarred man's smile widened. "Then we take it anyway, and you do not walk out." Cole was very still, and Rebecca could see him calculating, looking for an angle, a way out, but there was none. They were outnumbered and surrounded. "All right," Cole said finally. "Take what you want." The outlaws moved in, pulling Cole and Rebecca from their horses. Rough hands searched their saddlebags, taking the supplies, the food, their bedrolls. One man found Rebecca's bag and rifled through it, pulling out her few possessions. "Nothing but clothes," he said disgustedly, tossing the bag aside. The scarred man was searching Cole, finding his money pouch. He opened it and frowned. $50, that is all you got." "It is all I need," Cole said. The man's eyes shifted to Rebecca. "What about her? She got money." "She has nothing," Cole said quickly. "She is a widow. I am escorting her back east. That $50 was going to feed us until we got there." "A widow, huh?" The scarred man moved toward Rebecca, and she took an involuntary step back. "Pretty little widow. Maybe she has something else worth taking." Cole moved between them. "Touch her and die." The scarred man laughed. "Big words from a man with no gun. I do not need a gun to kill you." The tension in the air was suddenly electric. The other outlaws shifted nervously. Rebecca could see the calculation in the scarred man's eyes, weighing whether Cole was bluffing. Then a new voice spoke from above. "Let them go, Slade." Everyone looked up. A man stood on the canyon rim, silhouetted against the sky. He held a rifle, but it was pointed at the outlaws, not at Cole and Rebecca. "This is none of your business, Apache," Slade snarled. "I am making it my business. These people have done nothing to you. Take their money if you must, but let them go. There are 5 of us down here and 3 more up there with you. You want a fight, we can give you one. You can try." The man's voice was calm, confident. "But ask yourself if it is worth dying for $50. Slade stood there, clearly torn between greed and caution. Finally, he spat into the dirt and turned away. "Keep your widow. She is probably not worth the trouble anyway." He looked at Cole. "Get out of here. And if I ever see you again, I will kill you on sight." Cole did not respond. He helped Rebecca mount Daisy, then swung up onto his own horse. They rode past the outlaws, every muscle tense, expecting a bullet in the back at any moment. But the shot never came. When they emerged from the canyon, the man from the rim was waiting for them. He was Apache, perhaps 40 years old, with long dark hair and a weathered face. He wore a mix of traditional and white man's clothing and carried himself with quiet dignity. "Thank you," Cole said. "You saved our lives." The Apache nodded. "Those men are cowards and thieves. They give all men a bad name." He looked at Rebecca. "Are you hurt?" "No, thank you." "I am Rebecca Sutton. I am called Delche. I was hunting when I heard voices in the canyon. I am glad I came when I did." We lost most of our supplies, Cole said. Is there anywhere near here where we can resupply? My village is 2 hours north. You are welcome there. We have food and I can trade you supplies for work. Cole looked at Rebecca, asking the question silently. She nodded. They had little choice. We would be grateful, Cole said. Delche led them north, up into the hills, following trails that Rebecca would never have seen on her own. They reached the village as the sun was setting, a cluster of traditional wickiups nestled in a hidden valley with a good spring. The people of the village greeted them with curiosity, but no hostility. Delche spoke to an older woman, clearly the leader, and she nodded and gestured to one of the larger wickiups. You will stay here, Delche said. My wife will bring you food. Tomorrow we will talk about work. That night, Rebecca and Cole sat outside the wickiup, eating the simple but delicious meal that Delche's wife had brought. The village was quiet around them, families settling in for the night, dogs barking occasionally, children laughing. I have never been in an Apache village before, Rebecca said quietly. Most white people have not. Most are too afraid. Cole chewed thoughtfully. They are just people. They want the same things everyone wants: safety, food, a good life for their children. Delche saved us today. If he had not been there, those men would have killed you. Maybe worse. Cole nodded slowly. I know. We were lucky. Do you think those were the outlaws the army is hunting? The ones who killed that family, maybe. Or maybe just a different group of bad men. The territory is full of them. Cole looked at her. Are you all right? You have been quiet since we left the canyon. Rebecca thought about the fear she had felt when Slade looked at her, about how helpless she had been, about how close they had come to dying. She thought about how Cole had stepped between her and danger without hesitation. I am all right, she said, just realizing how dangerous this journey really is. Do you regret it? Wish you had taken the stage? No, if I had taken the stage, I would not have met you. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than she had intended. Cole looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable in the firelight. You should get some sleep, he said finally. Tomorrow we earn our keep. The work turned out to be helping repair corrals that had been damaged in a recent storm. Cole worked alongside the Apache men, cutting and hauling poles, while Rebecca helped the women with various tasks around the village. She learned to grind corn, to weave baskets, to prepare food in the traditional way. The women were kind to her, teaching her with patience and humor despite the language barrier. She also learned that Delche was a respected man in the village, a skilled hunter and warrior who had fought against the army but now sought peace. He had a wife and 3 children, and he loved them with a fierceness that was visible in every interaction. On their 3rd evening in the village, Rebecca sat with Delche's wife, a woman named Nayland, watching the children play. Nayland spoke some English, learned from missionaries who had passed through years before. Your man is a good worker, Nayland said, gesturing to where Cole was helping to finish the last of the corrals. He is not my man. He is my guide. Nayland gave her a knowing look. He watches you like a man watches a woman he cares for. We barely know each other. Sometimes the heart knows quickly. Nayland smiled. My husband knew me for 2 days before he asked my father for permission to marry. That was 20 years ago. Rebecca watched Cole across the village. He was laughing at something one of the Apache men had said, his face relaxed and open in a way she had rarely seen. He looked younger, happier. I am a widow, Rebecca said quietly. My husband has been dead less than 2 months, and you loved him. Rebecca thought about Henry, about their quiet life together, about the affection and respect they had shared. Yes, in my way. But you did not love him the way a woman should love a man, the way that makes your heart race and your breath catch, the way that makes you feel alive. Rebecca did not answer because she could not, because Nayland was right. She had loved Henry, but it had been a safe love, a comfortable love, nothing like what she was beginning to feel for Cole Ramsey. The realization terrified her. That night, Delche gave them fresh supplies, more than they had lost to the outlaws. He refused payment, saying they had more than earned it with their work. "Travel safely," he said as they prepared to leave the next morning. "And if you ever return to this territory, you are welcome in my home." Cole shook his hand, the gesture of respect between equals. "Thank you, my friend, for everything." They left the village as the sun was rising, following the trail Delche had shown them that would take them northeast toward New Mexico. Rebecca looked back once and saw Nayland watching them, a knowing smile on her face. The next week passed without incident. They crossed into New Mexico, the landscape slowly changing from desert to grassland. The nights grew cooler, the days less brutally hot. They fell into an easy rhythm, riding, camping, talking, and somewhere along the way, something shifted between them. It was small things at first. Cole riding closer so their horses walked side by side, his hand lingering when he helped her down from the saddle. The way his eyes followed her when he thought she was not looking. Rebecca felt it too, the growing awareness, the attraction that she tried to deny but could not. She noticed everything about him now. The way he moved, all controlled strength and grace. The sound of his voice, low and steady. The rare smiles that transformed his hard face. The gentle way he treated the horses, the careful way he treated her. She was falling in love with him, and it terrified her. One evening, 2 weeks after leaving Delche's village, they made camp near a small creek. The grass was tall and green here, and there were actual trees, cottonwoods that whispered in the breeze. It felt like a different world from the harsh desert they had started in. After they ate, Rebecca walked to the creek to wash. The water was cool and clear, and she knelt at the edge, splashing her face, letting the water run through her fingers. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Cole approaching. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Of course not." He knelt beside her and filled his canteen, then sat back on his heels looking at the water. "We are about 5 days from Kansas City," he said. "Maybe less if we make good time. 5 days. The journey was almost over." Rebecca felt her heart sink. "That is good news," she made herself say. "Rebecca." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his voice made her breath catch. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Do you really want to go back east, to Philadelphia, to your brother's house?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Rebecca looked at him, at the man who had protected her, guided her, become the steady center of her world over these past weeks. "I do not know what else to do," she said honestly. "I have no money, no home, no way to support myself. You could stay in the territory, find work, make a new life." "As what? A seamstress, a cook? I have no skills, Cole, nothing that anyone would pay for. You could marry again." The words felt like a physical blow. "Is there someone specific you are suggesting?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Cole looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe." Rebecca's heart was pounding. "Cole, I do not think I am not good with words," he interrupted. "I am not a rich man, and I do not have much to offer. But I have a place, a cabin up in the mountains north of Yuma. Nothing fancy, but it is mine and it is paid for. I make enough from guiding and scouting to live on. It is not an easy life, but it is honest. Cole, let me finish." He took a breath. "These past weeks, getting to know you, I have felt something I have not felt in years. Hope. Like maybe I could have more than just existing. Like maybe I could have a real life with someone to share it with." He met her eyes. "You are strong, Rebecca. Stronger than you know. You have survived things that would break most people, and you have done it with grace and courage. I admire that. I admire you." Rebecca could barely breathe. "You are asking me to marry you. I am asking you to consider it. I know it is fast. I know you are still grieving your husband. But in 5 days we will be in Kansas City, and then you will get on a train east, and I will probably never see you again. And I cannot let that happen without at least telling you how I feel." "How do you feel?" Cole reached out and gently touched her face, his rough palm warm against her cheek. "I think I am falling in love with you." The words broke something open inside Rebecca, some dam she had been holding against the flood of her own feelings. "Cole, I do not know what to say. Say you will think about it, that is all I ask. My husband has been dead for less than 3 months. People would talk. Let them talk. We would not be in Yuma. We could go somewhere else, start fresh where nobody knows us. I am not sure I can do this. I am not sure I am ready. I am not asking you to be ready. I am asking you to be willing to try." Cole's thumb stroked her cheekbone, the gesture achingly tender. "I know I am not much of a prize. I am rough and uneducated, and I have no fancy manners. But I would be good to you, Rebecca. I would work hard for you, protect you, cherish you. I would never give you cause to regret choosing me." Tears were streaming down Rebecca's face now, and she was not even sure why. Relief, fear, joy, grief, all tangled together. "Can I have time to think?" "All the time you need. But think quickly, because we do not have much time left." He stood up and walked back to the camp, leaving Rebecca kneeling by the creek, her mind spinning. That night she lay in her bedroll staring at the stars, unable to sleep. Cole's proposal had shaken everything she thought she knew about herself, about what she wanted. She had loved Henry. She had. But it had been a safe love, built on friendship and mutual respect and shared goals. She had never felt about Henry the way she felt about Cole. Henry had never made her heart race, never made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, terrified and exhilarated all at once. Was it love? Could you fall in love with someone in a matter of weeks? Or was it just the intensity of the journey, the danger and the forced intimacy, creating something that would not survive back in the real world? But what was the real world? Philadelphia, living with her brother, dependent on his charity for the rest of her life. That felt less real than this, than the man sleeping 10 feet away who had asked her to share his life. She thought about Nalen's words. Sometimes the heart knows quickly. Did her heart know? She closed her eyes and let herself feel, really feel, without thinking or analyzing or worrying. She thought about never seeing Cole again, about saying goodbye in Kansas City and boarding that train east. The thought made her chest ache with a physical pain. She thought about staying, about marrying Cole, about building a life in the territory. The thought terrified her. It also filled her with a strange, fierce joy. Her heart knew. The next morning, Rebecca waited until they had eaten breakfast and packed up camp. Cole was saddling the horses, his back to her, and she walked up to him and put her hand on his arm. "Cole," he turned, and she saw the apprehension in his eyes. He was afraid of what she would say. "I have thought about your proposal." And Rebecca took a deep breath. "Ask me again." Cole's eyes widened. "What? Ask me again, properly." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it. He took both her hands in his. "Rebecca Sutton, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Rebecca said, and the word felt like freedom. "Yes, I will marry you." Cole let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around. When he set her down, he was laughing, and she was laughing too, both of them giddy with relief and happiness. Then Cole sobered slightly. "Are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am sure." "I am terrified, but I am sure." Rebecca squeezed his hands. "You made me believe in love again, Cole. Real love, not just comfortable affection. You made me feel alive again. How could I say no to that?" Cole pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "I will make you happy," he whispered against her hair. "I swear I will. I believe you." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, and Rebecca felt something she had not felt since before Henry died: peace. They rode that day with a new lightness, making plans, talking about the future. Cole told her about his cabin, about the mountains where he lived, about the life they could build together. Rebecca listened and added her own ideas, surprising herself with how much she had to say, how many dreams she had that she had buried under practicality and grief. "We do not have to stay in one place all the time," Cole said. "I could still take guiding jobs sometimes, and you could come with me. See the territory, have adventures." "I think I have had enough adventure for a while," Rebecca laughed. "But maybe someday we will have horses, raise some cattle maybe, plant a garden. You could have chickens if you want." "I do want chickens. I always wanted chickens." They were still 5 days from Kansas City, but Cole said there was a town called Las Vegas in New Mexico where they could be married before continuing on. Rebecca would need to send a telegram to her brother, explaining that she would not be coming to Philadelphia after all. She dreaded that conversation, but it could not be avoided. 3 days later they rode into Las Vegas, a bustling town on the Santa Fe Trail. It was bigger than Yuma, with real streets and gas lamps and brick buildings. Cole found a hotel and paid for 2 rooms, though he gave Rebecca a look that said he hoped they would not need 2 rooms for much longer. The next morning, they went to see the local minister, a kind-faced man named Reverend Parker. He listened to their story, asked a few gentle questions about Rebecca's widowhood, then agreed to marry them that afternoon. "You will need witnesses," he said. "Do you have anyone?" "No," Cole admitted. "We are strangers here." "Then I will ask my wife and our neighbor to stand in. They will be happy to help." Rebecca spent the morning in a daze, shopping for a new dress, something clean and pretty for her wedding. She found a simple blue cotton dress with white trim, and a woman at the shop helped her wash and style her hair. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a bride, and it felt right. The ceremony was held in the church that afternoon, with the late summer sun streaming through the windows. Reverend Parker's wife and their neighbor, an elderly lady named Mrs. Chen, stood as witnesses. Cole wore a clean shirt and pants he had bought that morning, his hair washed and combed back, his face freshly shaved. He looked handsome, Rebecca thought. He looked like the man she wanted to spend her life with. The ceremony was simple. They exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they lived. When Reverend Parker pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her gently, reverently, and Rebecca felt tears on her cheeks. They were married. That night, in the hotel room that was now theirs to share, Cole was surprisingly nervous. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, looking uncertain. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "I do not expect anything. I know this is all very fast, and if you need time, we have time." Rebecca sat beside him and took his hand. "Cole, I chose this. I chose you. I do not need time." "Are you sure?" She kissed him, putting all her feelings into it, all her love and hope and trust. Cole responded carefully at first, then with growing passion. They came together with tenderness and desire, learning each other, discovering each other, sealing their promises with their bodies. Later, lying in Cole's arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Rebecca felt a contentment she had never known. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. "Rebecca," Cole's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes, thank you. For what? For taking a chance on me, for being brave enough to choose a new life." Rebecca lifted her head to look at him. "Thank you for asking. For giving me a reason to believe in love again." Cole smiled and kissed her forehead. "We are going to have a good life together, I promise you that." "I know," Rebecca said, and she did. They stayed in Las Vegas for 3 more days, and Rebecca sent a telegram to her brother explaining that she had remarried and would be staying in the territory. His response was terse, disappointed, but he wished her well. She felt a pang of sadness but no regret. This was her life now, her choice. When they finally left Las Vegas, they were not heading for Kansas City. They were heading home, to Cole's cabin in the mountains, to their future. The journey back to Arizona took 2 weeks, but it felt different now. They were not a guide in his charge anymore. They were husband and wife, partners, building something together with every mile they traveled. Cole's cabin turned out to be more substantial than Rebecca had imagined. It sat in a high valley surrounded by pine trees, with a creek running nearby and a view of the mountains that took her breath away. The cabin itself was well built, one large room with a fireplace and a loft, plus a smaller room that could be used for storage or, Cole said with a meaningful look, a nursery someday. "It is perfect," Rebecca said, standing in the doorway and looking out at their land. "It is absolutely perfect." They spent the rest of that first day settling in, and Rebecca was pleased to discover that Cole was relatively tidy for a bachelor. The cabin was clean, the supplies were organized, and there was even a small garden plot that had gone to weeds but could be revived. That night they sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Cole had his arm around Rebecca and she leaned into his warmth, feeling completely at peace. "Are you happy?" Cole asked. "Happier than I have been in a very long time. No regrets. None." Cole kissed the top of her head. "Good, because you are stuck with me now." Rebecca laughed. "I think I can manage that." The first year of their marriage was not easy, but it was good. They worked hard to make the cabin more comfortable, to plant crops, to establish themselves. Cole took occasional guiding jobs, but he never stayed away for more than a few days, always eager to return home to Rebecca. She learned to manage the homestead, to cook over the fireplace, to preserve food for winter, to handle a rifle when necessary. She got her chickens, and a cow, and a pair of goats. She planted a proper garden and was absurdly proud when her first vegetables came in. Cole taught her to ride properly, to track, to read the land. He taught her about the territory, about the people who lived here, about the complicated history of violence and survival. She in turn taught him to read better, spending evenings by the fireplace with books she ordered from catalogs, expanding the world of ideas and stories he had never had time to explore. They fought sometimes, because that is what people do when they live together. But they always talked through it, always found their way back to each other. The love between them deepened and matured, becoming something solid and lasting. In the spring of their second year, Rebecca realized she was pregnant. She told Cole one evening after dinner, simply and directly. His face lit up with such joy that she started crying, and then he was crying too, and they held each other and marveled at the life they had created. Their son was born in December of 1880, during the first snowfall of the season. The birth was hard, attended by a midwife from the nearest settlement, but Rebecca came through it safely, and the baby was healthy and strong. They named him Henry Thomas, for Rebecca's first husband and her brother, honoring the past while looking toward the future. Cole was a devoted father, doting on little Henry with a tenderness that made Rebecca fall in love with him all over again. He carved toys, sang lullabies in his rough voice, paced the floor when the baby cried at night, and beamed with pride at every milestone. 2 years later, their daughter was born, a tiny, fierce thing they named Claire. Then, 3 years after that, another son they called James. Their cabin grew crowded with children and love and noise, and Rebecca would not have had it any other way. She occasionally thought about the woman she had been, the widow who had hired a guide to take her back east. That Rebecca seemed like a different person, someone from another life. This Rebecca was stronger, happier, more fully herself than she had ever been. One evening, when the children were finally asleep and she and Cole were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Rebecca voiced this thought. "You ever think about that journey?" she asked. "When you were escorting me to Kansas City?" Cole smiled. "Every day. Best decision I ever made, taking that job. Even for $150. Especially for $150. It brought me you." Rebecca took his hand. "Do you know what I realized recently? I have been happy longer with you than I ever was before. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have." "You gave me the same thing," Cole said. "I was just existing before you, going through the motions. You made me want to really live." "You made me believe in love again," Rebecca said softly. "Real, deep, lasting love. The kind that makes everything worth it. I did not think I would ever feel that." Cole pulled her close and kissed her. "I love you, Rebecca Ramsey, more than words can say. I love you too." They sat together as the sun finished setting and the stars began to appear, the mountains dark silhouettes against the purple sky. Inside the cabin, their children slept safely. Around them, the land they had built a life on stretched out in all directions. Rebecca thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the grief and loss that had driven her from Yuma, about the desperate woman who had walked into a saloon to hire a guide. She thought about every mile of that journey, every danger faced, every moment of doubt and fear. And she was grateful for all of it, because it had led her to this moment, to this man, to this life. She was home. The years continued to pass in the easy rhythm of a life well lived. Their children grew, healthy and strong, running wild in the mountains, learning the land from their father and life's softer lessons from their mother. Henry grew into a serious boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's quick mind. Claire was fearless and adventurous, always the first to try something new. James was the gentle one, with a gift for working with animals and a quiet strength. Cole's guiding work became less frequent as the territory grew more settled, but he found other work as a tracker for the local law and occasionally as a hired hand on neighboring ranches. They never became rich, but they always had enough. More importantly, they had each other. Rebecca sometimes received letters from her brother in Philadelphia, cool and formal at first, but gradually warming as the years passed, and he saw that she was truly happy. He visited once when the children were young, and was surprised to find his sister thriving in what he had thought of as a savage wilderness. He left with a new respect for the life she had chosen. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Rebecca with a trip. He arranged for a neighbor to watch the children and took her on a journey, retracing part of the route they had taken all those years ago. They camped under the stars, cooked over an open fire, and talked late into the night like they had on that first journey. "You ever regret it?" Cole asked one night as they lay side by side looking at the stars. "Giving up the chance to go back east, to have an easier life?" Rebecca turned to look at him. "Not even once. This is exactly where I am meant to be, even with the hard winters and the isolation and the constant work. Especially because of those things. They make me appreciate what we have even more." She took his hand. "Cole, you gave me something I did not even know I was missing. You gave me passion and purpose and a love that makes me grateful for every single day. How could I ever regret that?" Cole squeezed her hand. "I am a lucky man. We are both lucky." They stayed out there for a week, recapturing something of that original journey, that sense of adventure and discovery. When they returned home, the children mobbed them with hugs and stories, and Rebecca felt her heart swell with gratitude for the life she had built. As the children grew older, They began to make their own paths. Henry, true to his serious nature, became interested in law and eventually left to study in Santa Fe, though he returned often. Claire shocked no one by marrying a rancher's son and staying in the territory, settling on land not far from Cole and Rebecca's cabin. James, sweet James, took over more and more of the work around the homestead, content to stay close to home and the land he loved. Rebecca and Cole grew older together, their hair going gray, their faces lined by sun and wind and laughter. But the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by shared experiences and the kind of intimacy that comes from truly knowing another person. On their 20th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the cabin for a celebration. It was a noisy, chaotic affair, with children running everywhere and food covering every surface. Rebecca stood in the doorway watching the chaos and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about? About how close I came to missing all of this. If I had gotten on that stage to Kansas City, if you had not offered to guide me, if I had not had the courage to say yes when you asked me to marry you, I would have missed this entire life. But you did not miss it. You were brave enough to take a chance. We both were." Rebecca turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me how you felt, for not letting me get on that train east. Thank you for listening, for giving us a chance." Cole kissed her gently. "I love you, Rebecca. Just as much today as I did 20 years ago, more even. I love you too, always." Their grandson, Claire's oldest boy, came running up to tug on Cole's sleeve. "Grandpa, come see what James caught in the creek." Cole laughed and let himself be dragged away, and Rebecca watched him go with a smile. This was her life, this beautiful, chaotic, perfect life. As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, the family gathered around a bonfire outside. The children roasted marshmallows while the adults talked and laughed. Rebecca sat with Cole's arm around her, surrounded by the family they had created, and felt complete. Henry stood up and raised his glass. "I would like to make a toast to my parents, who taught us all what real love looks like. What commitment and partnership and devotion mean. You built something beautiful together, and all of us are better for having been part of it. Thank you." Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. Rebecca felt tears on her cheeks, the good kind, the kind that came from being so happy you could not contain it. Later, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Cole and Rebecca sat together by the dying fire. The night was cool and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. "It has been a good life," Cole said softly. "The best life," Rebecca agreed. "Any regrets?" Rebecca thought about the question seriously, going back through the years in her mind. The struggles and the joys, the losses and the gains, the moments of doubt and the long stretches of contentment. "Not a single one," she said finally. "You, only that I did not meet you sooner, that we could not have had even more years together. We still have years ahead of us, I know, and I intend to make the most of every single one of them." Cole stood and offered her his hand. "Come on. Let us go to bed." Rebecca took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They walked to the cabin together, hand in hand, like they had walked through life together for 20 years. As they prepared for bed, moving through the familiar routines of a long marriage, Rebecca caught sight of herself in the small mirror on the wall. She was 50 years old now, her hair more gray than brown, her face lined with years of hard work and laughter. She looked nothing like the frightened widow who had walked into that saloon in Yuma all those years ago. She looked happy. She looked loved. She looked like herself. Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "What are you thinking about?" About how you saved my life. You saved mine too. We saved each other. Rebecca turned in his arms and kissed him. Yes, I suppose we did. They climbed into bed, into the comfortable familiarity of 20 years of sleeping side by side. Cole pulled Rebecca close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Cole," she said softly into the darkness. "Yes. Thank you for escorting me across the territory all those years ago." She could hear the smile in his voice when he replied. "Best $150 I ever earned." Rebecca laughed and snuggled closer. "I love you. I love you too. Now go to sleep." Rebecca closed her eyes, warm and safe in her husband's arms, and drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face. The years continued their steady march, bringing changes but never breaking the foundation that Cole and Rebecca had built. They grew older, their children grew up and made their own lives, and grandchildren became a regular and joyful presence. Cole's hair went completely white, making him look distinguished, Rebecca thought. Her own hair did the same, and she wore it in a practical bun most days. Their hands grew gnarled with work and age, but they still fit perfectly together. They made modifications to the cabin as they aged, making it easier to navigate. Adding a real bedroom on the ground floor when climbing to the loft became too difficult. James and his wife moved into a smaller cabin nearby, close enough to help when needed but far enough to give Cole and Rebecca their independence. On their 30th anniversary, the family gathered again, now even larger with new grandchildren and Claire's oldest daughter expecting her first child. Rebecca would be a great-grandmother. The thought made her laugh with delight. That night, after everyone had left and they were alone, Cole and Rebecca sat on the porch in their rocking chairs, a blanket over their legs against the cool evening air. 30 years, Cole said wonderingly. Where did the time go? Into a life well lived, Rebecca replied. Into children and grandchildren and this beautiful place we built together. Would you do it all again, if you could go back to that day in Yuma, knowing everything that would happen? Rebecca did not even have to think about it. In a heartbeat, every single moment, every struggle, every joy, every ordinary day, all of it. Cole reached over and took her hand. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. A breeze rustled through the pine trees, carrying the scent of the forest. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang its evening song. You know what I realized, Rebecca said after a while. That journey we took from Yuma to Las Vegas, it never really ended. We have just been on a longer journey together, and it has been more wonderful than I ever could have imagined. That is a good way to think about it. Cole squeezed her hand. And we still have more journey ahead of us. Yes, yes, we do. As the stars began to appear overhead, Cole and Rebecca remained on the porch, hands clasped, hearts joined, exactly where they were meant to be. The widow and the cowboy who had escorted her across the territory, who had fallen in love against all odds, who had built a life that exceeded every dream. Rebecca thought back to that frightened woman in Yuma, making the desperate decision to hire a guide, to leave everything behind and start over. She wished she could tell that woman what waited for her, that the journey she was so afraid of would lead to more happiness than she had ever known, that the cowboy she hired would become the love of her life, that saying yes to him would be the best decision she ever made, but maybe that woman had known on some level. Maybe that is why she had the courage to take the chance, to trust a stranger, to open her heart again when she thought it was too broken to love. Thank you, Rebecca said softly. For what? Cole asked. For everything. For asking me to marry you, for giving me this life, for loving me so well for so long, for making me believe in love again when I thought I never would. Cole brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "The pleasure has been all mine, Mrs. Ramsey. All mine." They stayed on the porch until the stars filled the sky, the same stars that had watched over them on that first journey so many years ago. And when they finally went inside, to the cabin they had made a home, to the bed they had shared for 30 years, they did so together, as they had done everything since that day in Las Vegas when they had promised to love each other for as long as they lived. It was a promise they had kept and would continue to keep for all the years they had left. Because true love, the kind that transforms lives and creates miracles, does not fade with time. It only grows stronger, deeper, more precious with each passing day. And Rebecca and Cole had that kind of love. The kind that started with a desperate widow and a solitary cowboy on a dangerous journey across hostile territory. The kind that grew through shared struggles and quiet moments in the building of a life together. The kind that lasted. The kind that made everything worthwhile. As Rebecca drifted off to sleep that night in Cole's arms, her last thought was one of profound gratitude. Gratitude for the courage to take a chance. Gratitude for the man who had seen something in her worth fighting for. Gratitude for every moment of their journey together. And gratitude for love itself, that mysterious force that can heal broken hearts and create new beginnings and make even the hardest life feel like a gift. She had found her home. Not in a place, but in the heart of the man sleeping beside her. And that was the greatest treasure of all.